Please comment where you are watching in the world. Now relax and let's dive in. This happened during my first year at university, when I was still trying to find my footing in a new city, surrounded by new people, figuring out who I was. I'd been single for a while, not out of choice really, more because I'm painfully awkward and not the type to get out much. One of my best friends had finally convinced me to try online dating, and although I was nervous, I figured, hey, why not? We'd both agreed that OkCupid might be the safest bet. It had more filters, fewer unsolicited D***K pics, and you could actually talk to someone a while before deciding whether or not they were a creep. That felt like a win to me. So I made a profile, posted some decent selfies, wrote a bio that sounded clever but not like I was trying too hard, and waited. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Guys who opened with "Hey sexy," or ones who made their entire personalities about going to the gym. But then I matched with this guy. I'll call him Liam. Liam was good-looking, like really good-looking. Tall, well-dressed, clean smile. The type of guy you'd expect to be full of himself, but weirdly, he wasn't. He seemed genuinely sweet. Said he recognized me from uni, though we didn't share any lectures. He struck up a conversation that didn't immediately feel like a weird interview or a sales pitch. Just natural. I remember being surprised at how quickly I relaxed with him. He wasn't like the others. We started texting regularly, late-night conversations that blurred into the early morning. I'd wake up, and he'd already sent a good morning message, never missing a day. After about a week or so of chatting, he asked me out for dinner. I agreed. I wanted to see if the person I'd been talking to for days was just as charming in person. Spoiler, he was. He pulled my chair out when we sat, held the door, complimented my outfit, but not in a sleazy way, just enough to make me smile without wanting to crawl into the floor. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about music, movies, what we were studying, future travel plans. I remember thinking, wow, I might have actually found a decent guy on a dating app. But as the night wore on, things started to shift. When he dropped me off at my uni dorm, he leaned in for a kiss. I wasn't ready, so I pulled back and gave him a hug instead. He kind of froze. His smile faltered, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, just for a second. Then he said something like, "Oh, okay," but the energy changed. That's when I noticed it. After that night, the messages didn't stop. If anything, they got more frequent. Morning, noon, night. It felt like I was dating him, even though I wasn't. He'd text me things like, "I miss you," or "Wish you were here," and we'd literally met once. One night I didn't reply for a few hours because I was studying for an exam, and when I finally checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls and a string of messages like, "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You said you liked me, but now you're ignoring me?" I thought we had something real. I remember sitting on my bed, just staring at the screen, heart thudding. It was like he'd flipped a switch. There was no in-between, no space. I hadn't even processed our first date, and he was already acting like I owed him something. I texted him back, something polite but clear like, "Hey, I've been busy with class, can you just chill a bit?" I thought maybe he just got overexcited or something. His response? He said he was in love with me. Just like that. In love. I didn't even know what to say. I felt this horrible mix of dread and secondhand embarrassment. Like, "No, Liam. We had one dinner. You do not love me. You don't even know me." I replied something along the lines of, "I don't know how you could think that. We barely know each other. You're coming on way too strong." That's when the threats started. Not direct threats at first. More like emotional blackmail. "If you don't talk to me, I don't know what I'll do. You're breaking my heart. Why would you do that? I need you. Please just say something." I stopped responding, and that pissed him off. Then came the rapid-fire barrage of texts. Some angry, some sad, some weirdly poetic and completely delusional. It was like reading the ramblings of someone with a split personality. "You said you cared about me. You think you can just ghost me like I'm trash? Don't make me come find you. You're just scared. I get it, but we belong together. You're mine." Each time I heard my phone buzz, my stomach flipped. I was alone in my dorm, far away from my closest friends, and I didn't want to tell my family what was going on because they'd just tell me to delete my apps and be more careful. I knew that already. That wasn't the point. Eventually, I just turned my phone off and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I texted Liam one final time. "You're scaring me. Please stop. Delete my number. Don't contact me again." He didn't reply. For a few hours, anyway. Then he started calling again. 30 times. I turned my phone off again. The second I turned it back on, it lit up like a Christmas tree. He hadn't stopped trying. I blocked his number. For a while, that seemed to do the trick. A few days of peace passed, and I started to relax. Told myself maybe he'd gotten the message. Maybe he'd just had a moment and was moving on. Then he found me on Facebook. He started commenting on all my photos, tagging me in weird romantic posts, and writing creepy stuff on my wall like, "You look beautiful today. You still think about me, don't you? We could have had something amazing." At that point, I had lowered my privacy settings so people from uni could find me easily. Big mistake. I changed everything to private and blocked him immediately. But the damage felt done. A few people I'd met at uni saw the comments and started asking questions. Then he started emailing me. Long paragraphs about how I broke his heart, how he sees me around campus and it hurts, how I gave up on love too soon. And then he said this, "You're such a good person, but it's kind of messed up how you handled things." That line stuck with me, like I was the villain for setting boundaries. I didn't reply, just kept blocking. Then came the final straw. I'd gotten a part-time job at a little cafe in the town center. Towards the end of a shift one day, one of my co-workers said something casual like, "That guy's been sitting across the street for hours." I didn't even think of Liam at first. But when I asked what he looked like, my stomach sank. It was him. I stepped out the back and peeked through the alley. There he was, just sitting on the steps across the street, staring at the cafe. Not moving. Not on his phone. Just watching. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone to call the police. The manager was an angel. She let me sit in the office and even stood outside to tell him the cops were on their way. After that, I finally filed a full report. Showed the police the screenshots, the call logs, the Facebook comments, everything. They told me they'd contact him directly. Just a warning, no arrest or anything, but enough to put him on record. That was the last time he ever contacted me. But not the last time I heard about him. About a year later, I was outside a pub having a smoke when this girl struck up a convo. We got to talking about dating horror stories, bonding through trauma, and she starts telling me about this guy who seemed perfect at first, but turned into a complete psycho after one date. Constant texts. Threats. Showing up places uninvited. My stomach dropped. I asked her what his name was. She said Liam. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, I know. Same thing happened to me." Her jaw hit the floor. We swapped details. Same patterns, same messages. The guy was still doing it. Still out there. I told her everything I did. Screenshot everything. Go to the police. Don't engage. Protect yourself. She was so grateful to talk to someone who understood. We kept in touch after that, and actually became good friends. Still are. That was the silver lining, I guess. I went through hell, but I helped someone else avoid it. Since then, nothing like that has ever happened again. I still date online, but I'm way more cautious. And now I know how to handle things if someone crosses a line. What stuck with me the most wasn't even the threats. It was how quickly things changed. How someone could go from a charming, respectful date to a walking red flag in under 48 hours. That, and how easily people can convince themselves they're in love with a fantasy they made up in their head. Liam never loved me. He didn't even know me. But for a while, he made me feel like I wasn't safe in my own skin. That's something I don't forgive. And I'll never forget. Back when I was 24, I was going through this weird, dry-ass patch in my dating life. It wasn't that I was shy or anything. I'd had girlfriends before, casual flings, the drill. But at that point in time, nothing was clicking. I was just striking out left and right, and my confidence had taken a bit of a beating. This was right before Tinder started blowing up. Like maybe a few months before everyone and their dog was swiping right. I didn't have the patience to wait it out. I was desperate. So I went the worst possible route, plentyoffish.com. Easily the jankiest, most soul-sucking dating site I've ever seen. The interface looked like something coded in 2002 by someone's cousin in his mom's basement. But hey, beggars can't be choosers, right? I figured, what the hell, maybe I'll get lucky. Instead, it was just pages and pages of tired, heartbroken divorcees airing out their trauma in their bios. Like full-on life stories in the About Me section. Most of them just wanted to feel loved again, or find someone to restore their faith in humanity. Which, don't get me wrong, I feel for them, I really do. Everyone deserves love. But as a 24-year-old guy still riding out the high of college parties and hookups, reading bios that sounded like therapy notes made me want to lie down in traffic. I was just about ready to quit when Tasha messaged me. She was my age, cute as hell, and had a personality that actually made me want to keep chatting. Like, no red flags, no weird energy, no trauma dumps about her ex-husband or her custody battles. Just good vibes. We started talking daily, funny convos, similar tastes in music, even the same messed up sense of humor. The only catch: I was away at university, and she was back home. But it wasn't that far, just a few hours. I told her I'd be back in town for winter break in December, and she said she'd wait to meet until then. I liked that. It felt kinda old school. When December rolled around, we were still texting nonstop. Tasha said her parents were going to be out of town visiting family for the holidays, and she invited me over to her place for what would basically be our first real date. And yeah, I knew what that meant. She was being all casual about it. Movie, pizza, just chill. But when she mentioned the house would be empty, I figured the pizza wouldn't be the only thing getting eaten that night. I threw a couple condoms in my wallet and shaved like I was preparing for battle. When I got there, she opened the door looking even better than in her pics. Tight jeans, oversized hoodie, no makeup, just effortlessly hot. We hugged, and it was actually kind of sweet. The nerves were real, but it was that exciting type. The night went exactly how you'd want it to. Pizza, Netflix, and then one thing led to another. By the end of the night, we were tangled up in her bed like a pair of drunk noodles. No complaints. Everything was great. Until the next morning. I woke up a little earlier than her. The sun was leaking through the blinds, and she was still fast asleep beside me, all curled up in this peaceful little cocoon. Not to sound like a creep, but I just laid there for a bit, soaking in the wind. That little high you get after a date actually goes well. She was cute, the night was good, and I was feeling smug as hell. Then I heard the front door slam. Hard. Like someone walked in angry. Instantly, my entire body tensed. You know that electric jolt your brain does when it switches from sleep mode to full-on panic? That happened. I shot up like a corpse in a horror movie and started throwing on whatever clothes were within reach. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I just knew it wasn't her parents walking in. Something about the energy, the footsteps, the way the door slammed. It wasn't parental. It was territorial. Tasha woke up too, groggy and confused. I whispered, "Someone just came in," and her face went pale. Dead silent for a second. Then she whispered back, "Oh my God. Hide. Hide under the bed." My heart dropped, like completely evacuated my chest. I didn't have time to ask questions. I just dove under the bed like it was Normandy and kept still. Seconds later, the bedroom door opened. All I could see from my spot were a pair of men's shoes. Leather loafers. He walked in like he owned the place. Not like a dad checking on his daughter. Nah. This was a grown man with some serious confidence. Then he spoke. "Hey baby, did you miss me?" I thought I was going to puke. The way he said it, baby, it wasn't fatherly. And then they kissed. On the lips. Not a peck. A full kiss. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't her dad. This wasn't a brother. This was a whole-ass grown man who thought he was her boyfriend. Or worse, sugar daddy. And I was under the bed. Naked, breathless, one sock on, hiding like a raccoon in someone's crawl space. I couldn't move. Every instinct told me to stay still or die. They talked for a minute. Him saying he missed her saying, "I didn't expect you home so soon," and other awkward stuff. She was trying to keep calm, but I could tell from her tone she was freaking out. Then he said something about needing a shower. The second I heard the water start running, I exploded out from under that bed like I was being born again. I scrambled to grab the rest of my clothes, whisper yelling like, "Tasha, what the actual FK is going on?" She was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't think he'd come back early. He wasn't supposed to be here, I didn't know." "Who is he?" She didn't answer. Didn't even acknowledge the question. Just kept apologizing and telling me to hurry before he got out. I didn't stick around for the Q&A session. I sprinted down the hallway toward the stairs just in time to hear the bathroom door creak open behind me. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was loud, angry, and dripping wet. I turned around. There he was, Greg. Maybe mid-40s, built like a gym rat, standing on the landing in nothing but a towel. We locked eyes for half a second. Just enough time for him to do the math. Then I ran. I don't mean like a jog. I mean full-blown Olympic sprinter. Oh my God, this man is going to kill me kind of running. He was behind me immediately. Screaming. Chasing. Towel flapping. At one point, I think the towel actually fell off because when I looked over my shoulder, the man was completely naked and still gaining on me. I made it to the front door, but it had one of those annoying locks you have to twist and pull. I fumbled with it just long enough for him to grab a fistful of my hoodie. For a second, I thought I was done. But adrenaline's a hell of a drug. I twisted out of his grip, yanked the door open, and bolted down the driveway barefoot. And yes, Greg chased me. Naked. Down his suburban driveway. I'm not even exaggerating when I say it was the single most terrifying moment of my entire life. Not just because I was afraid of getting punched. No, that would have been fine. I was afraid of getting my ass kicked by a full-grown, naked man, which is a very different kind of trauma. I kept running. No direction, no plan. Just get anywhere that wasn't there. Eventually, I looked behind me, and he was gone. I guess he remembered he was naked in broad daylight and didn't want to risk a neighbor calling the cops. Probably smart, honestly. I didn't stop until I was at least 5 blocks away, hands on my knees, gasping like I'd just finished a marathon. My shirt was inside out. I had no socks. My phone was at like 3%. And all I could think was, I almost died. For Pizza Hut and bad sex. Later that day, I blocked Tasha on everything. No goodbye, no explanation. She tried texting me later. I'm so sorry, please let me explain. I never replied. I didn't want an explanation. I already had all the answers I needed. I dodged a bullet. A big, sweaty, naked bullet named Greg. And I swear to God, sometimes I wonder what happened after I left. Did she keep doing that to other guys? Did anyone get caught? Get hurt? I don't know. All I know is that I got lucky. And I never used Plenty of Fish again. Back in 2017, I was 29, sitting in the cushiest job I'd ever had. I was the head of social media at a massive supermarket chain in the UK. Stable salary, pension plan, staff discounts, all the corporate perks. My LinkedIn looked shiny as hell, and on paper I was winning. But here's the thing, I hated it. I hated how my whole life revolved around Twitter algorithms and Instagram trends. I hated having to fake enthusiasm in meetings with suits who barely understood what I did. I hated the way our team had to walk on eggshells anytime someone on Facebook got offended by a sandwich ad. And most of all, I hated how I'd spent my 20s working overtime to climb a ladder I didn't even want to be on. I felt like I'd missed the point. All my friends were out traveling, partying, getting stories. Meanwhile, I was managing TikTok calendars and drafting posts about carrots. So one day, I walked into the office, typed up my resignation letter, and handed it in without flinching. My coworkers were stunned. One guy looked like he'd seen a ghost. Others were clearly eyeing my position. I didn't care. I was done. I had savings, no dependents, no real plan. And I wanted that freedom. That scary, exhilarating, aimless kind of freedom. I didn't know where I was headed. I just knew I was going somewhere. I'd always wanted to visit South America. The culture, the food, the energy, it pulled at me. Plus, I had a decent grade in GCSE Spanish, which, in hindsight, means jack all when you're trying to argue with a Colombian bank teller, but at the time it felt like enough. After some basic research, Colombia stood out. No, not because of the powder. I mean, yeah, I liked Narcos, but what sold me was the cheap cost of living, the football culture, and all the blogs that said Colombians were warm and welcoming. I booked a flight, prepaid 3 months' rent for a room in Bogota, bought some gear, rucksack, lightweight clothes, travel locks, you know the drill, and packed up my entire life into one giant leap of faith. The second I landed in Bogota, I felt it. The buzz, the chaos, the color, street vendors shouting over each other, car horns that never stopped, music blaring from open windows. It was messy, wild, and completely alive. I loved it. The first few weeks were like a dream. I ate everything, drank local beers, went to a couple of football matches. Most nights, I hit up this small bar near my hostel where I met Luis, a local guy who spoke decent English and had the chillest energy I'd ever seen. Luis became my unofficial tour guide. He taught me slang, showed me where to eat real empanadas, and gave me tips on where to travel next. One night over beers, he goes, "You should go to Cali. Mucho más tranquilo." I'd heard of Cali. Known for salsa music, beautiful women, less touristy than Medellin, and supposedly safer than Bogota. Luis told me there was a big salsa festival coming up. Even said the girls there were muy cariñosas. I had no plans. Sounded like fate. I booked a cheap 1-hour flight and headed off to Cali. Cali had a totally different vibe. Smaller, less overwhelming, way more relaxed. I liked it immediately. People weren't in as much of a rush. The weather was warmer, the pace slower, and the food, somehow, even better. A few days after I arrived, the salsa festival started. The whole city lit up. Streets were packed, music played day and night, and bars were overflowing with locals and travelers all dancing like they were born with rhythm in their blood. Me? I danced like a drunk giraffe, but I wanted to learn. So one night, I went out to a popular salsa club, alone, and planted myself at the bar. Nursed a couple beers, trying to work up the nerve to ask someone to teach me a move or two. For the first hour, I got nothing but polite rejections and giggles. Then I saw her. Maria Eugenia. Yeah, she had 2 first names. I made a joke about it, she laughed, and from that moment we just clicked. She was gorgeous. Long curly hair, sharp cheekbones, deep brown eyes. But more than that, she was charming. Funny. Warm. She said she was studying at a local university, and her English was nearly flawless, though we kept switching between Spanish and English like some hybrid couple in a rom-com. We talked for hours. It was one of those nights where time disappears. At closing time, her friends came over to drag her away, but before she left, she gave me her number and told me to message her if I wanted a proper date. I was buzzing. We met up 2 days later at this little cafe she picked out. She showed up wearing this flowy red dress and minimal makeup, effortlessly stunning. We talked for a few hours, moved on to a late lunch, and eventually grabbed some beers at a quieter place. She seemed genuine. No red flags. No awkward energy. Nothing shady. So when she suggested we head back to her place to keep chatting, maybe watch something on Netflix, I didn't think twice. I'd just spent all day with her. I felt safe. She stopped at a shop to grab a couple bottles of beer. Paid in cash. I remember she walked out already sipping hers, handed me mine, and we started walking toward her apartment. And that's the last thing I remember. I woke up the next morning in my hotel room, still dressed, face down on my bed, with vomit on the sheets and the worst headache I've ever had in my life. My tongue felt dry and fuzzy, my stomach was on fire, and I had zero memory of the night before beyond the walk with Maria. At first, I thought I'd just gotten blackout drunk. I'd had a few heavy nights before, but nothing like this. I couldn't even remember getting back to the hotel. I sat up, slow as hell, feeling like the inside of my skull was going to explode. Then I noticed something. No phone. No wallet. I checked everywhere, under the bed, in my rucksack, bathroom, closet, nothing. My heart started pounding. I went for my backup debit card, the one I'd stashed inside my passport as a just-in-case. Thank God it was still there. I pulled on some clothes, grabbed the backup card, and went out to find an ATM, figuring I'd just take out some cash and maybe replace my phone that day. I slid the card in, punched in my PIN, selected 50,000 pesos, about a tenner, and hit withdraw. Insufficient funds. Tried again. Same message. I told myself the ATM was just faulty. Tried another one. Same result. Then came the sinking feeling. I checked my balance. 4,122 pesos. That's about £1. I was supposed to have nearly 20,000 pounds saved. My entire travel budget. Gone. I felt my legs go weak. My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe. I raced to the nearest police station, stumbling through broken Spanish, trying to explain that I'd been drugged and robbed. When I told them the story, met a girl, had a beer, woke up missing everything, they just nodded. One officer said, Escopolamina. Scopolamine. I had never heard of it before. Apparently, it's a drug used in Colombia that turns people into zombies. Not literally, but close enough. It wipes your memory, makes you docile and obedient. They said it's often slipped into drinks. Victims stay conscious, answer questions, give up passwords, walk to ATMs, then wake up with no memory of what happened. The cops were matter-of-fact about it, like it happens all the time. I was stunned. They told me Maria probably wasn't even her real name, that she probably wasn't alone, that I'd likely been taken around the city to multiple shops and cash points while under the drug's effects, handing over everything. I asked if they could help me track her down. They shrugged. No proof, no ID, no cameras, no witnesses, they said. And then the kicker. You're lucky to be alive. Apparently, the dosage isn't always exact. A lot of tourists just don't wake up. They overdose and die in their sleep, bodies found in cheap hotel rooms a week later. I didn't know whether to be furious or grateful. When I finally got in touch with my bank, via police station Wi-Fi, they were horrible. Said I passed fraud checks, because the withdrawals were made with verbal confirmation. Told me I wasn't entitled to a refund because I'd authorized the transactions. Authorized? I didn't even remember them happening. Eventually, after weeks of emails and escalating the claim, I got a partial reimbursement, a couple £1,000. Not even close to what I'd lost. I tried hiring a lawyer in Colombia to pursue charges. That went nowhere. Police didn't care. No evidence. No real name. Just a gringo who got played. I lasted another 2 weeks in Colombia before calling it quits. My parents sent money to fly me home. I felt broken, ashamed, angry at myself, but also deep down relieved to be alive. That's the part that stuck with me. Yeah, I lost money. Yeah, I was stupid. But I could have died. That's not drama, that's just math. People die from scopolamine overdoses all the time. I just wasn't one of them. Looking back, I still think about Maria. Was that even her real name? Was she a student, or just pretending? Was she part of a whole operation, or just some freelance con artist? I'll never know. All I know is that one drink cost me nearly everything. And that when a city feels too good to be true, sometimes it is. Stay sharp out there. Story 17. I was in my early 20s and nowadays would have not put up with any of the shit I did, lol. He picked me up from my house. I walked out wearing heels, and he made me go back inside and put on flats because apparently I was taller than him with heels on. Nowadays that is when the date would be over for me, lol, but I did it. We drive to the restaurant. It's a casual spot kind of like a pub, but with fancier food. We sit down and order our drinks, and there's a table next to us of like 6 guys, all wearing jeans and camo or plaid, hillbilly-looking types. My date starts loudly talking shit about how ugly their clothes are, and the guys keep looking over at us like WTF. I told my date to stop because he was about to get a country boy beat down, lol. The waitress comes to take our order, and he orders for me, and it's something I don't want, so I say oh no thanks and order something else. After the waitress left, he was literally red in the face, fuming, not saying anything, and just staring at me. I awkwardly drank my beer until he said, "Don't you ever do that to me again," and launched into a rant about how I embarrassed him in front of everyone. He was being so loud and everyone was staring at us, and I just wanted to melt into my seat, lol. The food comes and he asks for the check. I offered to pay my half because I did not want to ever see him again, and I didn't want to give him a reason to feel like I owe him something. He goes off on me again about how I need to be trained to be a better woman, how I'm embarrassing him again, just tearing into me. I excuse myself to go to the bathroom, which is across the building and around a corner out of view. I was frantically texting everyone I knew trying to get a ride home and planned on leaving without him seeing. One of the country boys from the table next to us followed me to the bathroom and knocked on the door asking if I was okay. I came out and spoke to him, and he offered to drive me home, so I took it. I get in this guy's old beat-up truck, and he gives me a cigarette and takes me home and makes sure I got into my house before he took off. Lovely guy. 5 minutes later my phone starts blowing up, and it's my date. I guess he started losing his shit when he realized I was gone and found out I got a ride home from one of the guys he was insulting earlier. Accuses me of being a whore and sleeping with this guy. I blocked his number. He shows up at my house. Now he's banging on the front door so hard I'm afraid it's going to come off its hinges. I lived with 3 male roommates at the time, but none of them were home, so I called the house group chat and begged for one of them to come home. Thankfully my one roommate was just down the road, and he came right home. He's like 6 feet 4 inches, 300 pounds, so he scared my terrifying date away. After that he would randomly show up at our house and bang on the door and try all the windows to see if any of them were unlatched. Looking back, I should have just called the fucking cops. Thankfully he gave up on me after about a month. Probably found a new woman to terrorize. Another story here. Guy from school asked me out to dinner. I agreed. He said he wanted to surprise me with the location, which I initially thought was kind of sweet. He also insisted in picking me up in his car. I was young and didn't have reliable transportation, so I agreed. Once we were a few minutes down the road, he announced the name of the restaurant, and that it was an hour and 15-minute drive away. I said that was kind of far, but he waved me off saying he had a reservation and it would be fine. I realized I was trapped, so I rolled with it, thinking how bad could it be since I knew him from class? My mistake. Cut to me ordering my main course. He interrupted me mid-sentence and proceeded to change my order to something else entirely, insisting I'd like it better. No other reason or rationale. I protested. He refused to listen. I protested again, noting I didn't like some of the ingredients in that dish. He repeated his changed order and directed the server to ignore me as I continued protesting. The server stood there, shifting her eyes back and forth, unsure whose direction to follow. It was turning into an argument, and I felt bad for the server, so I acquiesced. Another big mistake. His selection was horrible. Inedible, really. I didn't finish it. He got mad and told me I was wasting food he was paying for. I responded by offering to pay my half of the bill. He refused, saying gentlemen always pay. Gentlemen also respect women's meal selections, but whatever, dude. Don't say I didn't offer. So he paid and we leave. He suggested we go see some sights in the area, but I tell him I don't feel well and just want to go home. He huffs but agrees. On the long drive back home, he interrupts the silence by asking, "So how many people have you slept with?" Totally out of the blue, no context or introduction. I was completely caught off guard. After a few moments, I managed to coolly reply that was none of his business. His response? "Oh, you must be a slut then." What? Wow. Just wow. Crickets the rest of the ride back. He asked me out for a second date a few days later. I said I didn't think that was a good idea. His response? "That's okay, I wasn't really interested anyway." He then spent the rest of the semester making snarky comments toward me and talking loudly about other girls he was dating whenever I was within earshot. Fun times. I've always been a little socially awkward. Not painfully shy or anything, just the type of person who doesn't really do parties or clubs, who freezes up when a cute guy makes eye contact, and who definitely didn't get much dating experience in high school. So when one of my best friends convinced me to try online dating during a lonely winter break, I figured, sure, what's the worst that could happen? That's how I ended up on OkCupid, setting up a profile that said something like, "Tall, sarcastic, indie horror lover." Looking for someone who gets my jokes and doesn't immediately talk about their ex. Didn't expect much, but surprisingly, I got a few decent responses. One guy stood out. I'll call him Dylan. Dylan was shorter than me, which he mentioned right away. He was 5 feet 7 inches to my 6 feet 2 inches. Honestly, I liked that he brought it up. He made jokes about how he'd probably need a stool to kiss me. Kind of dorky, kind of cute. I liked that he wasn't trying too hard. We messaged for about 2 weeks, and everything seemed fine. Quirky but not red flag weird. We talked about our favorite horror movies, we both loved the gritty indie ones, and he said he was a decent cook. I told him I wasn't big on fancy dinners for first dates, and he offered to cook at his place instead. Something simple, pasta and wine, and then we could watch some obscure horror movies on his projector. I was hesitant about going to his apartment for a first date, but we set up a full safety plan. My friend knew his name, address, phone number. We even had a code word in case I needed her to fake an emergency. The night comes. I drive to Dylan's place. Apartment building's not too sketchy, but it's definitely lived in. He buzzes me up, opens the door, and he's smiling like a kid at Christmas. "Wow," he says. "You're even taller in person." "Yeah," I say. "And you're even shorter." He laughs. Ice equals broken. His apartment was messy. Not hoarder messy, but like a guy who lives on microwave meals and Reddit. Dishes in the sink. Posters all over the walls, mostly horror flicks and anime. The air smelled like weed and Febreze. He gives me a quick tour, making sure I see the bedroom a little too obviously. "Got a queen-sized bed," he says. "Should fit us both if you stay." I laugh it off like it's a joke. I'm hoping it is a joke. Then we head to the kitchen, and that's when I realize the cooking part of the night was a complete lie. He hadn't bought anything. No pasta. No sauce. Not even bread. All he had was one bottle of red wine, which he kept saying cost over $100. Like I was supposed to be impressed. I hadn't eaten since lunch, assuming he'd be cooking, so I was starving. He offered me some toast and a handful of stale chips. I accepted, begrudgingly, and all the while he's refilling my glass every time I take a sip. "Want more? You sure? It's expensive. Come on, don't let it go to waste." It hit me after the third refill. He was trying to get me drunk. I mean, obviously. He kept pace with me, drinking heavily too, so part of me thought maybe he was just clueless, not predatory. But then he sat really close to me, leg brushing against mine, looking at me in a way that made my skin crawl just a little. I texted my friend our prearranged code word. She called 5 minutes later and nailed the performance. "There's been a break-in at the apartment," she said, just loud enough for Dylan to hear through the phone. "Can you come now?" "I'm freaking out." *T, I said. "I'm so sorry. I need to go." Dylan looked disappointed, but not angry. "You sure? The movie hasn't even started." "I know," I said. "But she's alone and kind of panicking." He nodded slowly, almost reluctantly, like he was deciding whether or not to believe me. That sucks. I was really looking forward to this movie. Oh, I said. What are we watching? Then he pulled out a Serbian film. If you know, you know. If you don't, good. Keep it that way. It's not a horror movie. It's a trauma factory disguised as cinema. It's banned in like half the world for a reason. I told him, I've seen it. Not a fan. He scoffed, like I'd just told him I didn't like oxygen. You probably didn't understand it, he said. It's an allegory. You have to look deeper. No, I replied, trying to stay calm. I do understand it. I just don't want to watch people get tortured and assaulted for 2 hours, thanks. He got quiet. That cold, defensive silence. Then said, just stay a little longer. At least until your friend sorts her thing out. That's when my friend texted again, 40 minutes away. She had to drop off her sister. Car trouble. Whatever. So now I was stuck. 40 minutes. With Dylan. In a dimly lit apartment. With that movie playing. I sat on the far end of the couch. Dylan sat way too close. He started ranting about the film's themes, his voice getting lower, his breath getting heavier. I wasn't listening. I just kept checking the clock. About halfway in, the movie got to a part that made me physically nauseous. I looked over and saw Dylan breathing through his nose, eyes locked on the screen. Heavy. Loud. Focused. I shifted. Tried to make some space. He noticed. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, lying. Then he slid closer, until our thighs were touching. He reached for my leg. I froze. He put his hand on my upper thigh, fingers just barely brushing the inside. I shot up like the couch was on fire. I'm sorry, I've really gotta go. No, wait, he said, standing too. I thought you liked me. I don't even know you, I snapped. He looked stunned, genuinely surprised, like I'd just betrayed him. I spent money on this wine, he muttered. I thought you were into me. And I thought you knew what boundaries were, I said, grabbing my bag. I rushed to the door, praying it wasn't locked. As I turned the knob, I heard it, this horrible, high-pitched screech behind me. You're not leaving. I didn't turn around. I just yanked the door open and bolted down the hallway. I didn't stop until I was outside, standing on the pavement, heart pounding in my ears. No sign of him. I called my friend. She was around the corner. She picked me up, and I didn't say a word until I was in the passenger seat with the door shut. Then it hit me, like a delayed wave of revulsion. The vibe, the forced whine, the movie, the breathing, everything had been a slow crawl towards something disgusting. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't had an escape plan. But I don't want to know. Later that night, I blocked his number. Then his Instagram. Then his OkCupid profile. A few days later, I thought, no. Not enough. I called the police. I knew I couldn't press charges. He didn't technically assault me. He didn't even touch me that badly. But I still wanted his name on record. The officer I spoke to was surprisingly kind. Said they couldn't investigate based on what I told them, but they'd flag his name. Just in case. I was glad I did it. It gave me some peace. I didn't go on another date for almost 2 years. I told myself it was because I was busy, that I was focusing on school. But really, I just couldn't trust anyone again. Not easily. Not after that. Because the truth is, you never really know someone. Not from a dating profile. Not even after weeks of texts and late-night calls. The mask only slips when you're already inside. And some people, like Dylan, they wear very good masks. I've been on some bad dates in my life. Awkward silences, weird vibes, one guy who brought his mum to the bar. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the night a guy literally ran at my car and punched my windshield with his bare hand because I said I didn't want to see him again. Let me back up. At this point in my life, I'd been out of the dating game for a while. I'd come out of a long-term relationship the year before and hadn't really been motivated to try again. My friends kept telling me to get back out there, but honestly, I just didn't feel like swiping through 900 guys holding fish in their profile pictures. Eventually, one night after a bottle of wine and a pep talk from my best friend, I made an OkCupid profile. I told myself I wasn't looking for anything serious, just someone to vibe with, maybe get back into the swing of dating again. That's when I matched with Mason. Mason was charming right from the start. Smart, a little sarcastic, but in a way that made me laugh. He had nice photos, some travel shots, a couple selfies, one of him at a concert. Nothing creepy or over-edited. We messaged for a few weeks, and he came across as the most normal guy I'd talked to on the app. When he asked me out for dinner, I figured why not. The first date was actually pretty good. We met at a mid-range Mexican spot downtown, public place, casual vibes. He was sweet, talkative, asked questions, and didn't once bring up his ex. He complimented my earrings, remembered what drink I said I liked in my profile, and didn't try anything weird when we said goodbye. I remember texting my friend afterward and saying something like, "Okay, he's not a serial killer. Might even go out again." She replied with a single word, progress. So a few nights later, we agreed to hang out again, this time at his place. Now, I want to be clear about something here. I wasn't planning on sleeping with him. I just wasn't ready, and we hadn't known each other that long. But the conversation had been good, and I liked the idea of seeing how he lived, whether he was clean, what he cooked, how he relaxed. You can learn a lot from someone's home. Well, lesson learned. From the second I stepped into Mason's apartment, I knew I'd made a mistake. The place reeked. It smelled like gym socks, expired milk, and something I couldn't quite place, like wet dog but spicier. I tried not to be rude, but my face betrayed me. "Sorry," he laughed. "Didn't have time to clean. Work's been nuts." Fair. I've had busy weeks too. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But then I walked past his open bedroom door and spotted a stain on the pillow that was either blood, wine, or ketchup. None of those options made me feel better. His kitchen was somehow worse. Plates stacked in the sink, old takeout boxes on the counter, one of which had something furry growing inside it. The trash smelled like it had been fermenting for a week. I actually had to breathe through my mouth at one point. Still, I tried to be chill. Not everyone's a clean freak. Maybe he was just messy. But the more we talked, the more the cracks started showing. He offered me wine but didn't mention that the expensive bottle he pulled out had already been opened and was half full. It was also warm. No snacks, no dinner, no plan for food at all. When I asked about his job, he waved it off like it was nothing and started talking about a kid he had with an ex. He said it super casually like, "Yeah, I have a son, but I don't really see him." I asked why because, that's kind of a big deal. He shrugged. Not interested in being a dad right now. My ex was crazy anyway. That was it. That was his entire explanation. That's when something shifted in me. The mess, the wine, the apathy toward his kid. I just couldn't do it. The ick had arrived, and it was loud. I made up an excuse about needing to get up early, and said I should probably head out. He didn't argue. He walked me to the door and said, "Well, I had a good time. You'll message me, yeah?" I said, "Sure," just to avoid confrontation. But in my head, I was already deleting his number. I got to my car in the parking lot, breathed a sigh of relief, and turned on the engine. As I started reversing out of the space, I caught movement in my rearview mirror. Mason, running, straight at my car. I froze. For half a second, I thought he'd forgotten something. Maybe I'd dropped my wallet or phone or something. Then, wham, he punched my windshield. Full force. No hesitation. The sound was like a firecracker going off. A spiderweb of cracks burst across the glass. I screamed, slapped the gear into reverse and floored it. I barely avoided hitting a curb, heart racing, adrenaline flooding my body like a dam had burst. I looked in the mirror again. He was chasing my car. I couldn't believe what was happening. This guy, who had seemed so normal just a few hours earlier, had gone full psycho in under 5 minutes. I didn't stop driving until I hit a well-lit petrol station. I parked, shakily pulled out my phone, and called my mom. I was shaking so bad, I couldn't even explain what happened properly at first. She Ubered to me so she could drive me home. I was too rattled to trust myself behind the wheel. That ride back was dead silent except for her muttering, "What the actual F*******" under her breath every few minutes. The next day, I filed a police report. I didn't have a dashcam or video proof, but I gave them his full name, address, the cracked windshield, and screenshots of our chats. They said they couldn't arrest him unless I wanted to pursue it legally and testify. I didn't. I just wanted him on record. They assured me they'd have a word, and that was good enough for me. Mason tried to text me 2 days later like nothing happened. "Hey, hope you got home okay. Had a great time the other night," smiley face. I didn't respond. Just blocked him on everything. To this day, I still don't understand what exactly triggered him. Maybe he felt rejected. Maybe he was always unhinged, and I just didn't notice because I was too busy trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Either way, lesson learned, first dates should be in public. Always. Even second dates, if the first one didn't leave you 100% certain that the guy isn't hiding bodies in his freezer. Story 15. For warning, this is going to be a long one. So a few years back, I went on a date with a guy I met on Tinder. I know this should have been my first red flag. I was 23 at the time, and he was 22. We had been talking for a while, and he seemed normal enough, so when he asked me on a brunch date, I said yes. He wanted to pick me up, and I stupidly agreed. So it all started off normal. The conversation was okay, and he was nice, but I wasn't really feeling it. Well, come the end of our meal, he says that he has a few more hours before he has to work and wants to keep hanging out. I couldn't come up with a good excuse not to, so instead of taking it back to a house, I suggested I show him around town a little. He was new to the area and said okay. So, after driving around for about an hour and a half, his truck starts overheating. He jumps out and checks under the hood and realizes that he got a hole in his radiator. So we head back to my place, and I told him that he could hang out for a bit and wait for his truck to cool down a bit, so he could get back home, but I had to work on a few things. He comes in, and I offer him a beer since I was going to have one while I worked on painting some cornhole boards for work. I turned on my TV and let him play some music. After I'm working outside for about an hour, I come back inside to find him completely trashed and bawling on my couch. He had finished the rest of the beer in my fridge and helped himself to a bottle of vodka he had found and had almost polished off a brand new bottle. I just froze. I ended up stepping back outside and called my mom to ask for advice. She could hear him wailing and singing at the top of his lungs in the background. I couldn't just send him on his way, as he was way too drunk to drive. So after talking to my mom for a bit, I went inside and told him I had some errands to run and I would drop him off at his place. He asked if he could just hang out at my house while I was gone. I told him hell no, as I actually know this man. So finally I get him to get his shoes on and out of the house, and he said he needs just a minute to say bye to his truck. He then proceeded to talk to his truck for 5 minutes before I could get him in my car. I drive him home with him, insisting on blaring the music as loud as it can go. When we got there, I told him I could stop by before work tomorrow and drive him back to his car. He said okay, but he needs help getting inside. Mind you, this man is like 6 feet 4 inches, and I'm a solid 5 feet 1 inch. So I get out and have to help this man get inside and lay him on his bed. He starts confessing that he is so happy I'm putting up with him, and that most everyone else wouldn't do this for him. I just say okay, and tell him I see him in the morning. It's like 5 o'clock at this point, so I think I'm done with this chaos until morning. I run my errands and get home around 9, and start putting away groceries. I had left my phone on the charger in the living room, and didn't think anything of it. I came back to my phone about 30 minutes later to 10 missed Snapchat calls. I never gave him my real number, and 4 voice messages. I listened to them, and all of them are him screaming at me to give him his truck back now, or he's going to freak out, and that he's walking to my house now to get his shit back. Honestly, it was all very threatening. So I freak out a little, and all of a sudden he's calling again. I pick up, and he immediately starts screaming the same things. I just asked him why he thought I was stealing his truck when I told him I would bring it back in the morning. Well, apparently he didn't remember that, and then asked for a ride the rest of the way. At this point, I just said yes so I could get this over with and get him out of my life. I called my mom and had her on the other line the whole time, just in case this guy tried to pull anything crazy. So I get him back to my place, and he asks if he could come grab his wallet that he left there. Again, my dumbass said fine instead of just getting it myself. So he comes in and then asks if he can just stay cause he's still drunk. I finally lose my shit. I ask him why the hell he started walking to my house in the first place if he couldn't fucking drive, and what his plan was. His response, I was just going to sleep in my truck. I told him to fuck off, and that I was done, and he and his precious truck needed to get off my property now. He finally leaves, but not before asking for another drink, and me screaming at him to get out. I sit down and just start bawling, praying this was all over, and I would never have to deal with him again. Oh, I was so wrong. The next morning my work I relay this to my co-workers, and just ask them to let me know if they see him or his truck hanging around. Then my bartender comes up and said there was a call for me. I answer, and lo and behold, it's him. I ask him why the hell he was calling, and apparently he went and got himself arrested the night before. My guess would be drunk driving, and wanted me to bail him out. I told him hell no. I then called the prison themselves and asked to be notified when he is released cause I don't trust that he wouldn't try to contact me or just show up. So they set me up with text notifications, and I go on my way. He got released like 3 days later and did try to text me, but I just ignored them. I didn't want to block him, just in case he did try anything I would have all the messages saved. Luckily, after those few texts, I never heard from him again, and I immediately deleted Tinder off my phone. Story 16. So I meet this girl on a dating app, right? Her name's Emily, and things are going great through texts. We've got some solid banter going, shared a few memes. It's the digital age romance at its finest. I suggest we meet up in person, and she's game. I'm thinking, okay, gotta pick a spot that's fun, casual, and not too loud. My buddy had told me about this new trendy lounge, downtown with good drinks and a cool vibe. Perfect, right? Well, little did I know that this trendy lounge was actually a strip club. Yeah, you heard that right. So the night of the date, I'm feeling pretty confident. I pick her up, and we head to this lounge. Now, as soon as we walk in, I notice something's off. It's dimly lit, which I expected, but the ambience was a little, let's just say, extra. There's a lot of neon, a bit more red lighting than you'd typically find in a cocktail bar, and the music was, how do I put this, aggressively sexy. But hey, maybe this place just has a unique vibe. Who am I to judge? We grab a seat, and I'm about to impress her with my knowledge of cocktails when, out of nowhere, a woman who is wearing significantly less clothing than anyone else in the room appears on a stage in front of us and starts, well, doing her thing. It takes me a moment to process what's happening. Like, my brain is fighting to convince me that this is just some kind of modern art performance. Then it hits me. This is not a trendy lounge. This is a freaking strip club. I glance over at Emily, who is now sitting there with her mouth slightly open in what can only be described as a mixture of shock, horror, and the realization that she's on a date with possibly the dumbest man alive. And what do? Like any sane person in this situation, I blurt out, so I guess I should have checked Yelp reviews, huh? She doesn't even laugh. Not a chuckle. She just stares at me like she's trying to figure out if I'm a moron or a pervert. I'm desperately trying to figure out how to salvage this when the waitress, also scantily clad, because of course she is, comes over and asks if we'd like anything to drink. And because I'm the king of terrible decisions, I order us both drinks. Yep, I decided the best way to handle this situation was to stay and have a drink at the strip club. By this point, I'm in full-blown panic mode, but for some reason I think, maybe if we just sit here and chat like it's a normal bar, everything will be fine. Spoiler, it was not fine. Emily's trying to make small talk, bless her heart, but it's hard to have a conversation when you're actively avoiding eye contact with everything in the room. The dancers, the patrons, the waitstaff, literally everything in my field of vision is a disaster zone. To make matters worse, this guy who clearly spends a lot of time here decides to plop down at our table. He's got a beer in one hand, and with the other, he starts giving me unsolicited advice about how to treat a lady in a place like this. I'm sitting there trying not to cry laugh, while Emily looks like she's mentally writing a Yelp review titled Worst Date Ever. Finally, I decide it's time to throw in the towel. I apologize profusely to Emily and suggest we get out of there and go literally anywhere else. She agrees, probably because she fears for her sanity at this point. We leave, and the car ride is the most awkward silence I've ever experienced. I drop her off at her place, and she gets out of the car so fast I'm surprised she didn't leave a smoke trail behind her. The cherry on top. The next day, I get a text from her saying, "You seem nice, but I don't think we're looking for the same thing. Best of luck," which is dating app code for lose my number, you weirdo. And that, my friends, is the story of how I accidentally took a first date to a strip club and ruined any chance I had of a second date. The moral of the story? Always check Yelp reviews before picking a date spot. Story 12. In 2020 I was young and kinda desperate. 17, and just looking for people to hang out with really. So I met this guy on a dating app. He seemed nice enough. Not my type, but had potential for a glow-up, you could say, so it motivated me to give him a chance. He was 22, and I was stupid. It was a hot summer afternoon. I met up with him on a corner between our houses, and we went for a walk. He was friendly, too friendly. And he stunk. He was absolutely fucking rank. Just imagine the worst body odor you've ever smelled in your life, and times that by 3. Now, I was trying to give him a chance, but he was wanting to hold my hand, and all I could think about was how dirty his fingernails were, how greasy his hair was. OFFS, just thinking about it right now is making me gag. We ended up sitting under a tree to talk, and he beckoned me to sit next to him, where he then put his arm around my shoulders. I turned my head away to just get a whiff of a fresh breeze because otherwise I'd fucking pass out. He's putting his other hand in my leg, nodding his head, until he says, Yeah, this could definitely be something. Gross. Anyway, I offered to get us ice cream after he made it known he didn't have any money, and we walked him home after that. He lived with his grandparents at the time, in their basement. He offered to show me around, and politely I agreed, until he took us downstairs. We got into this whole virgin talk, you know how it goes. I told him I was, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for that yet. He puts his hand on my knee and tilts his head towards a mystery room. I can take care of that for you right now. I excused myself and ran home. I burned the shirt and exfoliated like hell when I realized his sweaty BO smell had soaked into my shoulder. I know this may seem like I was super superficial, but like I said, he wasn't really my type, and on paper his interests and hobbies seemed sweet enough. He was just down on his luck currently, so I thought I'd sweep my judgment to the side and give him a chance. Holy fuck, I sometimes feel like I can still smell him. Then we have another story. I actually have a shitty MS Paint comic somewhere I drew about this like 30 years ago, El Mayo. Strapping cost, this one is crazy. Went on a sort of date with a guy at a bar in the city that I frequented to play pool and get some dinner maybe. It was a dead slow night as we were getting some shitty winter weather. I'ma call him Dumbshit Danny. At that point, we were the only two people in the bar. Dumbshit Danny started just pounding beers and got beyond wasted. Started badgering me to go home with him. After repeated no's, I finally snapped at him and he lost his shit. Let loose this howling wail and threw himself at my legs. Scream crying, with snot and tears pouring down his face, he started begging me to go home with him. I could not get him loose from my legs and started jabbing him with the pool stick I was holding to get him to let go. I looked up over his head to exchange dumbfounded looks with the equally nonplussed bartender who finally jumped into action. I think he was so shocked by the guy's behavior that it took him a minute to process. I know I was, having never seen anybody behave like that in my life. Bartender has to drag dude off me and winds up dragging him outside because he won't leave. Dude is ugly, crying the whole time. Oh, but wait, it gets better. Like a dummy, I stuck around too long chatting with the bartender, who was a friend of mine. At first it was kind of a stick around to make sure dude gets gone, but then I got to yakking and lost track of time. Was interrupted by another patron coming in the back who hollered, "Mad. There's someone out here kicking your car." Me and the bartender rushed out to find he had gone and gotten his equally drunk friend and come back. The friend was kicking my car and screaming that I was a slut while Dumbshit Danny was laying face down on the ground next to my car. Not passed out. Just laying there. I guess he was still crying. What the fuck he was doing. Before any of us sane people had time to process, this little tableau caught the attention of a cop in the Wendy's drive-thru next door. He comes straight over the curb to get to the bar parking lot. Dude kicking my car gets arrested. Dumbshit Danny gets told to GTFO, or he would get arrested too, having been told once already to leave. He slinks off into the night. I hope to never see him again, but that was too hopeful. Because round about 3 a.m. Dumbshit Danny shows up at my house. I still lived with my parents in a small town at the time, a good 45 minutes from the city. This was back in the phone book days, so it wasn't too hard to find my parents' house, the phone book for this town being the size of a magazine, and us having a unique name. My stepdad gets woken up by Dumbshit standing in our front yard yelling incoherently. Calls the county sheriff. Dude tries to tell him I invited him over, but nobody is buying it, lol. He finally gets arrested. Bails out. Immediately starts emailing me all this nonsensical shit. Email after email. Finally I wind up having to get a restraining order against the guy. He's sending me hundreds of emails and showing up at the places I hang out. He broke it 3 times, getting arrested all 3 times. Finally, after that last arrest, I never heard from him again. 20 or so years later, I'm at that same bar, and his name comes up in conversation. I asked what happened to the guy as I'd known him back in the 90s. I did not mention any of the history I had with him. Just dumbass Danny? I used to know him. Whatever happened to him? Apparently he had a bad breakup and moved to California in 00. It's me. I was the bad breakup LMAO nutbag. Story 13. Younger sister set me up on a blind date with an older coworker, said she thought we'd get along great. When I arrived at her apartment, it was a mess, with clothes and dirty plates strewn about, and she herself was already half soused and unsteady. Orange lipstick half smeared, green eyeshadow, cockeyed eyelashes, clunky wooden jewelry, laddered hose, scuffed and shapeless flats, one safety pin bra strap showing. You get the picture. Strike 1. On the ride to dinner, she repeated a non-stop stream of inanities from supermarket gossip mags. Sister hadn't told her I'd worked in the film and TV production industry for 30-plus years. I had worked with, or at least had met, many of the people she was running her mouth about. Strike 2. I took her to a new, high-end Mexican restaurant, a reservation for which I had had to call in a big favor from our production coordinator. While we waited at the bar, she ordered and downed 3 shots of Patron in 15 minutes flat. When we were shown to our table, she flirted shamelessly with the waiter, then ordered 2 of the most expensive appetizer, lobster tacos, the most expensive entree, filet mignon con huile coke, and a pitcher of margaritas, for her. I was driving and couldn't drink. Strike 3. Just as her shockingly expensive entree arrived, she loudly announced she had to go to the little girl's room, and abandoned it to get cold. Strike 4. When she staggered up, she pushed her chair into a waiter behind her, which caused him to spill the carafe of red wine he was pour onto the next table and its 2 occupants. Strike 5. She didn't even notice. Strike 6. After she was out of sight, I apologized to our neighbors and put a 50 on their table to pay for their cleaning. Then I found our waiter, paid for our meal, paid for the neighbor's wine, gave him a generous tip, and booked. 3 days later, the woman actually cornered my sister in the ladies' room and asked why I hadn't called her yet, because apparently we'd had a wonderful time. She'd actually become so blotto after those margaritas that in the morning she didn't remember I'd abandoned her after the first hour, or that she'd had to take a cab home. Strike 7. Was supremely pissed at sister who figured I'd get along great with a ditzy, unkempt, barely functioning alcoholic slob. Another story to add for you. I went on a date with someone from Facebook dating. I was pretty fresh out of a relationship and had recently discovered FB dating. I was caught off guard by how many conversations I was having with different women. I had used POF and OKC off and on for years prior, and had only talked to a very small handful of women from those sites in that time, and had only ever met 2, including my recent ex. So I was texting this girl back and forth. Wasn't really the most enthralling conversation in the world, but we agreed to meet up for dinner regardless. She lived about an hour away from me, so I was driving out to meet her. On the way, she texted me asking to cancel the date. I pulled off the highway to text her back, letting her know I was already on my way, but had only just gotten on the highway, so we could postpone. She changed her mind, and said I could come meet her. I asked if she was sure, and she said yes, so I continued in her direction. When I got to the address she gave me, I let her know I had arrived, and shortly after, she emerged from between 2 houses, looking nothing like her photos and dressed all the way down. I didn't think much of it when I saw it, but once she got in my car, I was overwhelmed with the stench of what I could only describe as raw garbage. I didn't comment on it, and carried on with our date, quietly wondering to myself if I had just picked up a homeless girl. We went to Kelsey's, had dinner and some entirely unremarkable conversarian, and called it a day. I paid for per meals, and she had me drop her off at a different location than I picked her up from. Never spoke to her again. Story 14. I never get bored of telling this one. A few years ago I met this guy whom I'll call Matt. Matt and I had some mutual friends. He invited me to a concert. We lived in different towns, about 15 kilometers apart. The concert was to take place in a third town, about 15 kilometers away from the town he lived in. After the concert, we would go back to his town, and I would sleep at my best friend's house. They both lived in the same town. So Matt comes and picked me up. I had a bag with a few things like pajamas and clothes for the next day. I leave my bag in his car and go to his apartment, because he insisted on me meeting his mom. This was the first red flag for me, because why would you like your mom to meet me on our first date? I ignored it and went to see his mom. For the whole agonizing hour we were there, she talked about his ex, how good-looking she was, how smart she was, how funny, and so on and so forth. She concluded with, "I don't really understand why they broke up." I knew the girl. I didn't like her, which made it even more cringe for me. They had been together for 2 weeks, so it wasn't really that big. I stood through all this tirade stoically, just smiled and nodded until he was ready to leave. I left my bag in his car and left for the concert. I couldn't drink anything as I was on antibiotics for a dental problem, so I gave him my free shot, which all the 15 first girls at the concert received. Besides that shot, he drank a beer. Because of this little quantity of alcohol, he was absolutely wasted, slurring his words, saying stupid things, not walking properly, etc. The concert took place in a bar, and he stopped the concert in the middle of it, telling the band they couldn't sing properly. They gave him a microphone because he wanted to prove to them he was better. They put 3 instrumentals for him, but not one of them was good. I felt really embarrassed, so I went outside to smoke, not really knowing what to do. While I was smoking a cigarette, one of the singers came outside and started talking to me, mainly making funny remarks about my date. I told him I was sorry for his behavior, but the guy was cool and okay with it. At that moment, Matt came outside and proceeded to accuse me of cheating on him with the singer, because why else would we make conversation? He told me I would have to make it home on my own, and I told him that was okay. I didn't really feel safe going home with him. I took my phone out of my pocket to find someone who could take me home, but my battery was dead. I could not find a charger for my phone in all that bar, so it became a problem, because I didn't want to leave with him, but I also couldn't find any other way back home, as there weren't any buses or trains. One of his friends assured me it was okay. They would safely take me to my friend's house. So we eventually left. We reached his town and the driver, Matt's friend driving Matt's car, stopped at the end of the street on which my best friend lived. I didn't have time to get out of the car because Matt, who was in the back seat, caught my hand. I was in the passenger's seat and told the driver I would spend the night at his place. The driver started arguing with him, and that was when I saw a police car parked right across from us. I said, "If I don't get out of this car this very minute, I will shout as loud as I can." The driver panicked, took Matt's hand away from me. I exited the car, and I was happy. Just a few more steps were between me and my friend's house. But things couldn't stop there, could they? While I was crossing the street, I heard a car door closing behind me. I looked back. Matt was out of the car, coming after me. I started running, knocked on the police car's window, and the policemen exited their car. They asked me what was wrong. I told them. I gave them my ID, and they told me to wait in their car. Matt started shouting at them, calling me stupid, telling them I was a D*UG addict, I was a liar, and so on and so forth. The policeman could see he was drunk, could see I was being calm and eloquent, so they soon realized who to trust. They fined him for talking badly to and about me in front of them. He threatened them they would hear from his lawyer. They just ignored him and got back into the car. They could see where I lived in my ID, so they asked me if I wanted them to take me home. I didn't want to cause any further trouble, so I told them it was okay. I could just go to my friend's house. They insisted on driving me the short distance. Bless their kind souls. I spent the night at my friend's place, and, the next day, I realized my bag was still in his car. I thought about abandoning it. It contained some clothes, some makeup, my hair straightener, and my antibiotics. But my friend told me she would send her mom to take it back from him, being sure he wouldn't cause a scene in front of her mom. So the mom meets him, takes my bag, give it back to me. Everything in the back was ripped, cut, destroyed. Everything. I could not contain myself. I called and cursed him for 5 minutes straight, without repeating myself, and without giving him a chance to say anything. The next day, I heard he had told all his friends that the fine he received was 10 times the amount it actually was. So yeah, none of the other bad dates I ever had beats this one. Story 9. I have a few of these stories. 1. A girl messaged me about 6 months ago. She had a decent profile, mentioning going to film school in NYC, along with a love for comics. I was intrigued. Beyond that, she was really cute and 5 feet 7 inches, which was perfect for a 6 feet 4 inches man such as myself. After a few messages back and forth, I asked her out on a date, in which she mentioned she was nervous about meeting in person. The fears were completely reasonable. She had a friend who had a terrible experience with online dating, taking to a guy who ended up being a 40-year-old man that sent fake pictures. I agreed that we can text for a few weeks until she was comfortable. Once she became comfortable, she asked to meet at a public place, just in case I was not who my profile said I was. When we met, she was easily 40 pounds heavier than her pictures, about 3 to 4 inches shorter, and that was only the beginning of the lies. She was not currently going to film school, but instead planned on going once she finished community college. Furthermore, at 23 she had been in community college since she was 18, and it wasn't because she was working during this time to afford it. She was currently living with her parents, and was unable to drive to the date. Her parents had to drive her. After the date, she continued to message me for 2 months, and is the reason I now only give out a Google Voice number to my dates. Understandably, there is nothing wrong with going back to school, or even living with your parents during a hard time. This, however, was not the case. She was neither looking for work nor had immediate plans to move on with her life. 2.1 of my dates knew they had Scrabble at this bar and decided to play board games there. She was so into the game that she had not interest in talking and getting to know each other, just play Scrabble. The game went on forever, and I seriously just wanted to go home by the end of the night. Sure, Scrabble may be fun for some people, but not on a first date at Prohibition Bar, especially when you refuse to talk between turns. Afterwards, she talked about how she cuts her own hair, her daddy issues, and how she sees a psychiatrist for image issues. 3. I am at a wine bar with a date. We are having a good conversation, and the date was going decently, not bad, not great. After a drink, she starts slurring her speech a bit, and then says, "Can I ask you a serious question? Are you gay?" After explaining that I am not even bisexual, she then say, "Well, I am not that into metrosexual men." This girl proceeded to message me 5 more times on OKC to see if we can hang out as friends. 4. And my favorite, my first date on OKC got drunk and vomited at a bar. When I offered to walk her home, she refused, saying she does not want some stranger from the internet knowing where she lives. I even offered to walk her a few blocks from her place, in which she still refused. I am not going to leave some drunk girl, no matter how obnoxious, stranded in the middle of downtown SJ, so I just walk around town with her for 3 hours. During that time, she talked about her pet rats and her scoliosis. After she sobered up, I let her drive home, in which she then texted me the next day to say, I did not feel a romantic connection. 5. Story from a friend. Lovely young lady, attractive, funny, and loved the same movies I do. She had a sort of free-spirited thing about life that at times my structured engineer self can't wrap my head around. Though I figured, what the hell, let's meet for drinks and see. I meet her a couple blocks from the bar, as we both live walking distance. She's giggling and silly almost from second one. She then proceeds to tell me about a huge bowl her roommate and her smoked before heading out. Now, I have no opinion on the substance. I tried it, didn't like it, think within limits it being legal is fine. That's not the issue. It would be like showing up drunk to a date in my mind. We get drinks and she's starving, checking all the stereotype boxes. Gets more food than her slim frame can handle, and we chat. It's really hard to talk to her. Have you ever tried to talk to someone stoned when you are sober? She claims she's fine, but she does it almost every day, and someone better accept that. The date goes on longer than it should because she got 2 full meals, and because I'm a sucker for conversation that, while interesting, I know won't lead anywhere. We part ways and I exchange a nice hug. Within 2 minutes I get a text saying I'm too dull and boring and need to loosen up. Well, I am an engineer, and I'll admit I'm a tad structured, but really? I politely told her showing up high to a date was immature. She freaked out, name-calling, saying how I'm a loser. Yes, the loser with multiple graduate degrees making $85K a year at a Fortune 500, and you move from random artsy job to artsy job. I'm too lame for her, and oh, my nose is ugly. Hey, I can't change my genetics for having a big nose. Which the last 2 women I dated, who were great looking, seemed to think was masculine. Story 10. I moved to Utah a few years ago, and I'm an agnostic lesbian, so I knew this would be terrible going in. First girl took me to a bunch of Ted Bundy sites, which admittedly was kind of interesting, but probably should have been a red flag. We slept together a few times, and I tried at one point to ask her a little more about her sexual preferences, so we could explore some things if she liked. She basically screamed, "Don't you want to find out?" And I was like, I'm okay. Didn't see her again. Seemed like she was still hung up on an ex anyway. Second girl was really cute and had a hot tub, but come to find out she was a raging alcoholic. She had a bunch of gay/bi women over for a party, and they were all sloppy drunks and seemed like shitty people. The whole group had fucked and dated each other. They were weirdly aggressive and all wanted to arm wrestle. I love a competition, at least, so I was like, bet. I beat them all, and we got to this big bitch. I was doubting I would win this round, but I did. She got butt hurt and demanded we try left-handed. I still beat her, so at least I had that high. I saw her a few more times BC. I was bored and I hate myself, but one morning she called McDonald's and started screaming that she couldn't get chicken nuggies at 9 a.m., and I just couldn't anymore. Next girl was on and off for a while, and she was a lot of fun, but also seemed to have some anger issues or something going on. She had a dream that we were drinking blood one night and woke up flipping out. I had to sit on the couch and contemplate why I was here in Utah trying to date all these religious trauma girls. She got mad that I didn't reassure her it wasn't real. Why do I need to reassure you that I'm not in a blood cult? Later she started dick riding some guy and told me she had to get plan B, and maybe she was bi. Okay, enjoy your journey I guess, but I was past caring at this point, so her jab didn't get a reaction out of me like she wanted. She continued to try to get a rise out of me by mentioning several other partners for the next few months. Finally I went off on her, and she got filed in the blocked section with all the others, so I could have blessed peace. I'll gloss over all the girls that think they are poly here, but don't really know what that means. My poly lifestyle died in Utah, BC. Holy hell, it's bad. The last girl I met on Hinge. We went for a short hike and camped for a bit. She was really shy, and I wasn't sure if she even liked me. I cooked shrimp scampi over the fire and massaged her hands. BC, they always hurt her. It started getting late, so we packed up. I sliced the shit out of my hands on my knife in the dark and was bleeding everywhere, but I tried to keep cool about it as I drove her back and didn't say anything. BC, I'm in a demonic blood cult and all. I got out to wish her good night. She gave me the shyest and fastest peck on the lips that completely surprised me, and ran so quickly inside that it seemed like she vaporized into thin air. I was left standing there and was like, okay, I guess she likes me. Anyway, we are married now, and if I can find love in this weird-ass state, then so can you. Another story here for you. I was dating someone I went to middle school with and reconnected with after high school. She had been living with a man she was engaged with, but he kicked her out because he got cold feet. So after finding out she was basically sleeping in the park, I just let her come stay with me. She lived with me for about a year, no issues, I thought. I lost my job, and the house I was renting was sold out from under me at around the same time. So we moved in with some of my family. I asked her to get a job to help make ends meet and pay our cell phone bill. I was already working again at this point. She went and got a job and worked for about 2 months before getting fired and not telling me. She then proceeded to have me or my family take her to work every day and pick her up every day. Then she would have a friend pick her up from the parking lot, and she would go sleep around with every guy she knew and make them pay her so she could hide the fact that she wasn't working anymore. Then one day she got dropped off by her ex, the one that kicked her out. She said that they were just friends when I asked her about it. Found out from one of my other friends later that night that he caught them at a movie theater making out, and she promised that she would sleep with him, my friend, if he didn't tell me. Fast forward 2 days after I actually started asking our mutual friends what was up, she had told them all that I was into reclaiming. I am not. So they never bothered to let me know when they caught her sleeping around because they all thought I was into it. I confront her about it. At this point I knew about 8 guys she was sleeping with and wasn't 100% sure about another 4. She threw a fit, started destroying and throwing around furniture, tipped over a fridge, and pulled a TV off of a wall. All while saying if I was a better boyfriend, I would have just let her sit around at home all day, and I would have paid for everything she wouldn't have had to sleep around. I told her to get out of the house until she calmed down, and we could talk about what to do next. When she gets back 2 days later, she stayed with her ex. She decided to throw a brick at my house trying to break windows, but fortunately she wasn't exactly strong enough. My mom pulled up, she was coming over for dinner, and she threw a brick and hit my mom in the chest. So cops were called, she was arrested. We didn't end up pressing charges on the condition that she gets her stuff, leaves, and never comes back on the property. She does, and I'm there along with one of my friends and an officer. The officer asks me to answer a few questions, and my friend watches her, but doesn't know whose stuff is what. So she comes out, throws a box into her ex's car, and takes off. I got back to my room to find that she stole my PS2 and all of my games, stole my wallet, social security card and birth certificate, and she had cut the power cable to my PC while my friend had run to the bathroom. Told the cop who was still there, and he went and found them and took my wallet, social and birth certificate back, but because I had no proof that the PS2 and games were mine, he couldn't do anything about those. I decided to stay single for about a year after that, but when I go to re-enter the dating pool, I come to find out that she had been dragging my name through the mud at every bar, club, and venue I frequented while we had been together. According to her, I beat her, threw her out without cause, stole her money, attacked her, destroyed all of her things before she could pick them up, ECT. She also did this to 6 of the guys I had contacted and confirmed that she was sleeping with. And even now, 10 years later, I occasionally go on dates, and someone will say, oh wait, you're that guy who beat, and our asterisk his GF a few years ago. Worked out after she was gone that she had ultimately been sleeping with 16 different men, who all thought they were exclusive. And she scammed all of them and myself into paying her way for a while there. I would tell you all her names so you can avoid her, but I found out from her mom late last year that she had voluntarily entered treatment for schizophrenia and pathological lying, and I really hope she gets better. Story 11. She wanted to do a picnic of sorts, but it was July, incredibly humid, and a bit steamy/rainy that day. She insisted we did the picnic deal. Spent an hour getting this table nicely set up with food, dessert, candles, a nice tablecloth, cushions for us to sit on comfortably. Had never done this, but was trying hard to impress. Was actually quite proud of the end result. She arrives 15 minutes late, there was no connection hardly at all. She was not talkative, despite spending hours on the phone texting for a week leading up to date. She said she loved Latin/Caribbean food, so I got takeout from one of the best places local, a kind of assortment of things. She didn't touch any of it. She sat and looked at the river in the background, and I asked her a couple of times if she was okay. If she would like to move closer to the river? Was there anything I could do to make her more comfortable? And she would just smile and say no, and that it was all wonderful, again, while not touching a single thing except a bottled water she brought. I sat through this for almost an hour. Finally, I just flat out said, I guess I was expecting a bit more conversation or at least some engagement in this. I'm sorry, it seems this date was a bust. And she just awkwardly smiled and said, I'm sorry too, I can see you put a lot of effort into it. So because I had nothing to lose, I asked her what was wrong or what I did wrong. And she responds, nothing really, I just think this is all a bit overboard for a first date. It's kind of cringe, like you're desperate. I can't even lie. My feelings were pretty hurt as I put together the date based on her cues and questions I had subtly asked. Even went ahead with the gross atmosphere of 90-degree weather and steamy, post-storm humidity. I wanted to respond, but I just bit my tongue and said, well, if you're not going to eat, I sure am. And I went to town on the food while she sat there. There was a couple sitting on a swing near us, and I went, hey guys, you hungry? And as it turned out, they were on a date, but were broke, so were just enjoying each other's company. And I invited them over to enjoy the table full of food with me. She left a few minutes after they came over, having said nothing since I started eating. And after she left, I had the best time with these two strangers, eating and laughing and telling them what happened, and both of them telling me I deserved better. I'm still good friends with them some 10 years later now. Never heard from the girl again outside of a single text later that evening saying, I'm sorry, that was a bitcha thing for me to say to you. I guess expecting me to respond, which I never did, just blocked her number and moved on. Another story from my friend. He showed me his car, and he pulled up a breathalyzer that was installed by the driver's seat. He explained that he had to blow in it or the car wouldn't start, and also every 5 to 10 minutes or so the thing would beep and he would have to blow in it again. He made it seem like it was no big deal. He said jump in, and we can grab dinner. I said I'm just going to drive my own car to the restaurant, because I never let strangers drive me anywhere. He seemed totally shocked but said okay. We got to the restaurant, and he said he didn't have any money, and asked if we could walk around a park instead. I said okay. This park was sketchy and gross. He immediately hiked his leg up really high on a tree like almost doing the splits, and said he had to stretch. He then tried to coax me to walk some isolated trails, and I flat out said no, and that I wasn't comfortable being isolated alone with someone I didn't know. He kept saying, but you do know me. He then proceeded to talk about a bunch of boring nonsense. He asked if I wanted to go back to his place to have sex. I said no. He then got really annoyed and said he was wasting his time on this pointless date. I said I agree, and I'm leaving. I started walking back to my car, and he said, oh, I parked much closer, let me give you a ride back to your car. And he put his arm around me hard, and was basically making it so I couldn't get away. I played dumb, and said something like, wow, you're so strong, do you work out? Blah blah. He began walking me to his car without letting me move. I decided to play into it, and said, you know that you're holding me against you, I kinda do want to go back to your place. He lit up and said, oh yes, we can have so much fun. We got back to his car, and he walked me towards the passenger side. By this point, he had let up a bit, thinking I wanted to bang him. My heart started racing, and my head was screaming for me to get away. I felt like if I got in that car I was doomed. Suddenly I said, OMG, what was that? Pointing behind him. He turned to look, and I fucking Olympic sprinted away. He started to chase me, screaming at me, but he was too slow. He ran to get back in his car, and peeled out trying to follow me. I called 911 and hid. I was able to give them his car and plate, and description, etc. He didn't try to find me for long. He left the park and raced away. I stayed hidden until the police came. They drove me back to my car and said they would follow up with me, but that he hasn't technically done anything illegal. After that, I only met in public in the daytime for dating. It was scary as fuck. Story 7. I have a couple of stories. First was the time when I was trying to meet up with a 24-year-old woman, and instead, there was a 40-plus-year-old man. His logic was that since you already came here, you'd want to hang out anyway. Except I didn't. I left quite rudely. Then there have been the constant times gay men have sent me very vulgar messages, talking about how they would pleasure me. And some of them actually made me feel physically ill because of the descriptions. This is very odd, considering I always advertise I am a straight male, but apparently to some guys, straight means in the closet. Let's see what else. Oh, there was the date with literally the most boring woman on the planet, who also lied about her looks. When I met up with her, not only was she a little bit hard to look at, lot of wrinkles for a 30-year-old, but she was literally so boring. She literally had nothing to say about herself aside from, I like to read, and I sometimes drink wine. She mostly wanted me to constantly talk about myself, but I needed some form of response from her aside from practically blank stares. Then there was the woman who was quite clearly not from the US and, well, this one was a bit odd. She sent a picture of her hair, saying she took it last week, and when I showed her that the picture was from 2001 and plastered all over Google, she insisted it was her hair. She kept trying to have me call her and gave me, for different phone numbers. She kept insisting on a meet-up, and despite me saying, no, you have not been truthful, I do not want to meet up, she kept thinking I wanted to. I'm not entirely certain what her motive was, but I'm glad I never met up. Then there was the time I met up with this blonde woman. We decided to go to dinner, and literally within the first minute of us sitting down, she pulls out her phone and starts talking to a friend. For nearly 10 minutes this happens until she stupidly said, yeah, I'm on a date with this loser. I'm gonna make it seem like I'm gonna let him have me, but just use him for a free meal. Honestly, who the hell admits that on a phone conversation during the date? When I got up to leave, she got a little pissy, until I quoted exactly what she said. That's when she turned rather red, starting to yell how I shouldn't eavesdrop on people's phone conversations. I simply left. I should also mention I picked her up. She didn't have a car with her. Another story to share. 2 years and 2 states later, I'm still a little hesitant about posting this date. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't understand why anyone posts decade-old profile photos. I'm a curvy girl. If a guy isn't into that, I'd much rather he politely ignore my first contact email than do a disgusted double take when he first sees me. Gentlemen, it doesn't matter how good you looked 10 years ago when you had more hair and less belly. If your photo is so out of date a woman can't recognize you, I promise there is no hope she will look past your flabby exterior and see the shining human being within. Instead, she's going to take one look at you and assume everything you've told her is a lie. Don't be that guy. Officer Creepy was succinct, flattering, and interested in meeting over dinner, his treat. At the time, I thought any excuse to visit one of Bardstown Road's tastier houses of meaty delights was a good one, so I agreed to meet him on a nice, unromantic Tuesday. Based on his profile, I expected a slightly straight-lacked, pleasantly plump, curly-haired man 8 to 10 years my senior. When I showed up, the restaurant was full of the usual Bardstown Road crowd of hipsters on dates, young professionals out for a night of adventure, and cheerful tables full of heavily tattooed and pierced people who work on the strip. I took a seat by the bar and let the waitress know if I was here for a first date. If he stood me up, I'd order some empanadas to take home. Internet date? She leaned in conspiratorially. Is there a special rescue signal I should know about? This is one of the reasons I loved first dates on Bardstown. I grinned and gave her the Vulcan, live long and prosper salute. Suddenly, a hand clapped on my shoulder. Let's take this outside. The bald, jolly stranger behind me was older than my father. Excuse me? Chris Rachel and I will take a large carafe of sangria and a table outside, he told the waitress. Okay, he knew my name. Either this was my date, or I was finally about to be recruited into a secret government agency. Come on, Shield. Please be real. I've always wanted to live on a helicarrier. Sadly, it was my date. He carried the sangria out and poured for me. I drank nervously while looking over the menu. He silently topped me off, carefully watching me drink. You look a little different than I expected, I said. He looked at me like I'd just revealed a state secret. They said to use my best photo. When was that one taken? In the photo, He leaned over the edge of a boat floating in front of some mountains. Now, I suspected he'd have a heart attack if he tried to hike a mountain and would sink straight to the bottom of a lake if he tried to swim. When I was 42. What year was that? His profile said he was 44. The last 2 years must have been very hard on him. He glared at me. 1996. I sighed. He was older than my father. He topped off my glass again. What do you think I do for a living? I really couldn't guess. A desk job. He obviously didn't get much exercise. He crossed his arms. I'll give you a hint. You wouldn't be here if you knew. Garbage collector? I guessed. Try again. Accountant. I'm serious, he growled. So am I. I suck at this game. Just tell me, what do you do for a living? I'm a police officer. He refilled my sangria. I noticed he hadn't taken a sip of his own. Great. He topped off my glass every time I took a sip. I tried to gauge whether or not I'd had a whole glass yet. Just to be safe, I knew I was trapped for at least 2 hours if I didn't want to risk him accusing me of drinking and driving. I reached into my purse to try and summon a rescue. Turn off your cell phone. I don't want you texting all through dinner. There went my primary lifeline. Moving very slowly, I did as I was told. The waitress emerged to take our orders. I tried holding up my Vulcan salute slightly behind his head, but his eyes flickered to my reflection in the restaurant's window. He pulled out his badge and showed it to the waitress. Bring us a pitcher of water and come back for our order in 15 minutes. She promptly disappeared, avoiding eye contact with us both. Once she was gone, he got down to business. I took down your plates after I saw you get out of your car. Let's get something straight. I've seen your blog. You're not writing about me. If you do, I'm sure a girl like you has done things you regret. You don't want to regret them more. My eyes widened in shock. Nothing makes a date go better than liquoring a girl up and threatening her. I only write about the bad dates, I reminded him. Honestly, most of my dates are just plain conversation. We don't really feel a spark. We go our separate ways. No harm done. I gave him an optimistic smile. He laughed bitterly. How a date ends is always up to the woman. I couldn't quite tell if that was a threat, a suggestion, or both. He topped off my sangria again, then looked me in the eyes. You'd regret writing about me. It's a bad idea. Now take a drink. Relax. I dutifully put the glass to my lips. Over the next 2 hours, I learned that after his upcoming retirement, he fantasized about building an isolated house on a cliff face in Chile, where supplies would be delivered by donkey once a week and no one would bother him. I pointed out I'm a city girl who loves living in a walkable neighborhood with my own corner bookstore, restaurant, and bar where the staff knows me. I learned he resented people with advanced education because, according to him, the only purpose of an academic degree was to indoctrinate people into the liberal agenda. I pointed out I listed my MA in history on my online profile. I learned he thought the space program was a stupid waste of money. I pointed out I follow the X Prize religiously and covet stock in Bigelow Aerospace. Under other circumstances, I would have left over an hour earlier, but I wasn't sure how to get away from Officer Creepy without being accused of a DUI. I hadn't touched my sangria since his revelation. After a while, I had to know. Listen, I asked as politely as I could. I'm pretty honest on my profile. I'm a liberal, overeducated, geeky city girl. We don't have anything in common. Why did you write to me? Girls on OkCupid put out. The horror in my face must have fazed him. He grunted and looked away. Never mind. You're fatter than I expected. That was the first good news I'd heard all night. I'd rub mud in my hair and roll around in trash if it would get me out of this horrifying date. I like lanky tech nerds built like a sack of hangers. This conservative cop was not only older than my father and willing to lie about his age and interests to con a woman into meeting him, but he had the graceless figure of an overripe pumpkin. I scrambled to come up with an appropriate response that would save face for him without resulting in retribution for me. It was really interesting meeting you, but I'm looking for a relationship, not a one-night stand. I'm sorry you wasted your evening. Let me buy dinner. Get the sangria too. The carafe sat untouched since he revealed he was secretly a cop. I felt lucky he didn't tell me to buy him a gift certificate and a box of donuts. I waited silently while the waitress boxed up both our dinners for him to take home. This better not show up on your blog. While I waited to sign the debit card receipt, he huffed off to find some other women to intimidate. Once he was gone, the waitress topped off my carafe of sangria before sealing it with aluminum foil and a rubber band. Take it home. She gave my shoulder a sympathetic squeeze. You look like you could use it. Story 5. Well, it wasn't so much that she wanted to do what I now know as the daddy/little girl game, and that she actually literally identified as a 4-year-old, age play I think they call it, or that she was clearly still obsessed with her ex, or that after all this coming out on the second date, she proceeded to divulge that she had been raped many, many times. In graphic detail. It was so excessive that there's no way it was true, but when someone tells you that kind of thing you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We ended up back at some relative's house, and just as I was about to bounce I realized she was already really drunk, despite only having a couple of drinks. She was a pretty tiny girl though, and then she began to talk about Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. No, it wasn't any of the previously mentioned things. It was Sweeney Todd that led me through one of the most bizarre experiences of my life. Apparently it was the greatest play ever penned, blubbered out in a grand drunken dissertation that probably couldn't be rivaled by even the greatest booze artists of our time. I admit, I was captivated in some morbid way. I stayed and sipped on my drinks as she went further down a rabbit hole that, as it existed within her, had no bottom. It was like watching someone who wrote their thesis on the thing, but was promptly failed vent about the injustice of it all. And I imagine she would have failed because she handed the thesis into a technical writing class while drunk. This is how discordant and obtuse it all was. By my guess, the only type of person still willing to listen to what was becoming more obviously a compulsion evolved far beyond impulse were strangers. The other people present had expressions like it was happening for the 1000th time, and they were powerless to stop it. And I was powerless to look away. Such a passionate, fervent, elaborate, and frenzied car crash. Then she started singing. And did she ever sing? She fell over regularly, and her words were so slurred, and her physical movement so slothful and blurred, that I knew I was in for a real show. She did the whole play. From beginning to end, every part, each character with their own voice. She was mostly naked by the time it ended. I sat there and cheered her on, and tried to stop her drinking, and stoked the fire pit in the backyard of this stranger's house. She didn't miss a beat, a line, a gesture. Even when I went to the can, the neighbors hollered and the dogs barked, and I was beginning to wonder if I wasn't dreaming or something. I had never before nor since seen someone so in love with a piece of art as this crazy little French girl was. I was almost envious that I didn't feel that way about something. When she finally wrapped up and I told her to take a bow, she toppled over doing just that and proceeded to crawl over to me in my chair and try to initiate a blowjob. I laughed, picked her up, carried her in the house, and dumped her on the couch. Didn't even bother saying goodbye. I knew she wouldn't remember it anyway. I walked back to my truck laughing and contemplating the sheer absurdity of humanity, knowing I'd never see anything like that again. Wherever you are, Michaela, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you found your daddy, and life's a little smoother for you. But it probably isn't. Blessed be the mad ones. On top of this story, here is another to add. We matched, he said I was cute, and asked how small I am. I gave him my height/weight, and he replied with something like, "That's so hot." He then asked who I lived with and learned I live alone. He said he had roommates and wanted to come over to my apartment. I told him that I would only meet him in a public place. If that went well, I might invite him over, but considering that my size and that the city's pretty gritty for an itty-bitty pretty boy, I never invited people I hadn't met to my home. I thought he was cool. He sent flirty texts for about a week before I suggested we meet at a coffee shop at noon on Friday. He asked me to name the location. I did, but he said he couldn't get there on his lunch break. I said since you are the one with time and location restraints at that time of day, why don't you pick the cafe? He said he wanted to meet at my apartment. I told him no, and asked if he'd pick a coffee shop. I think he joked about meeting at my place for the 3rd time. I named a coffee shop and said that I'd meet him there at noon, if I got confirmation. This was around 10 a.m. on that Friday. I hadn't heard back from him by 11, and realized that I didn't want to meet this guy. I have to remember that because I'm openly trans on my dating profile, people may target me for assault. The first thing this guy did was confirm that he's large enough to overpower me. He then asked to meet me at my home, where I live alone. Even after I was very clear that I would only meet him in a public place, he kept joking that I should invite him to my apartment. He could have been a dumb, horny guy, but he also could have been someone targeting me for assault. I went home and picked up a work gig. I was out of cellular service for an hour, and had a lot of messages from him when I returned. He said that the app wouldn't let him text me all morning, and he was sorry, but still wanted to meet at my apartment. After all that, he still refused to meet me in a public place. It freaked me the fuck out. I told him that I didn't want to meet him anymore and deleted the app. Story 6. Buddy of mine wanted to get in the game, but is super cheap, so he was using plenty of fish, mistake 1. Connects with a chick who seemed down to clown, so he, mistake 2, invited her to his house. She immediately is upset that he doesn't have Tito's vodka, and that's the only thing she drinks. So she insists they go to the liquor store and get some. Now my buddy is 50-50 that he's going to get robbed, but the other 50% is a good chance of getting laid. So he compromises by telling her to drive and leaves his wallet behind. They get into her car, and there's no seat in the passenger side. She says she has a huge dog, so she took the seat out and just sit in the back. And they head off to the liquor store. During the drive, he comes to the understanding that this woman is drunk. He's still holding out for the sex possibility, though they get to the liquor store, and it's too late, closed. The chick says, I know a store they're open late, but the liquor stores are all state stores, they all have the same hours. She insists she knows a place, and he's captive in the back seat. She gets on the interstate, and a while goes by in silence, and he eventually asked, where are we going? And she screams in terror. She'd forgotten he was in the back seat. She tells him they're going to the liquor store in a city 30-minute away. Now he's almost given up on the failing hope of getting some strange, and just wants to live. Asks if they can just go home, and she screams again. Forgot he was in the car again. So he tried to keep a full conversation going to keep her awake and aware of him, and they eventually get to the destination magic open liquor store. It was closed. She insists it's open and goes to the door and starts pounding on it. Now comes the peanut gallery. Some Mexican guys are sitting in a truck drinking beers and yell at her, that's closed. You want a beer? And she starts yelling racial slurs at them, and not even the right ones for Mexicans. Now 3 Mexicans and a drunk/high/bipolar chick are trading profanities. And my buddy finally reached sex chance equals 0% point and just walked away. Turned around the corner and sat down at a bus stop and called me. It's like 1 a.m. on a work night, and I see the call and like, this can't be good. So I drive to get him. He tells me this whole long story that I honestly can't remember half of. It was much worse. Then we drank at his place until dawn and called in sick to work. On top of this story here is another. Not a date, but rather a girl I was hooking up with at a party, and it's kinda long, but I just think the whole thing was so weird it's worth sharing. We were in her kitchen and we begin to make out, and suddenly she starts talking about how her best friend is totally in love with her, but she keeps kissing me while saying so. Then she elaborates by saying, yeah, my best friend is outside in the party, and I'm like, whoa. Well, should we stop? She goes, no. And I'm kinda uncomfortable anyways because I've been the best friend and I kinda wanna stop. She goes, no, it's totally fine, and then keeps going on about it. Lick really going into detail and tells me the whole story about how she liked him, but then she didn't, and I'm like, okay. And before I can decide what to do, the best friend walks into the kitchen. He goes, I'm sorry, and then walks out. Normal uncomfortable situation, right? Well, this happens at least 3 times. Like, he keeps walking in and going, sorry, dude is clearly drunk at this point. So the 3rd time I'm like, nah dude, you guys clearly need to talk. I'll just be outside, you figure out stuff. And the girl holds my hand and makes me stay, but then starts talking to him and like, she wants me to be a 3rd neutral party or something. She begins to tell him that she didn't like when he did so, and she asks me, what do you think, while holding my arm tightly and not letting me go. I said fuck it and just end up playing along and actively listening to them and trying to help them. I'm a teacher, so I guess I'm good at that. Long story short, I managed to get out of that situation eventually. We go outside, and a few hours later people start leaving, so I go back to her apartment to grab my stuff. Of course, she comes back with me, and now we're all alone in the apartment. We go back to the kitchen and things start getting hot again, when suddenly we hear a knock on the door. And guess whose voice we hear outside? Yeah, of course, her best friend. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's it, bye. And as I'm about to leave, she stomps her feet on top of the couch, putting her leg between me and the door, and asks me, so what are we? And I'm like, nothing. We just kissed, and listen, I'm sorry, I just went through a breakup, so I'm not really looking for anything more than that right now. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. And that was true, but also I didn't want to get into that whole mess at all. She goes, but can we still mess around some more? And before I can say anything, the best friend knocks again. So we open the door and he is there, and then he says sorry again, and I say, chill, I'm leaving anyways. And before I can go down the stairs, the girl calls me up and goes, my friend is too drunk. Can you make sure he gets home safe? And since I can't for the life of me say no to that, I end up in a cab with him 5 minutes later. During the trip, he starts telling me how much he loves her, but that she hurt him, and so on and so on. And I can totally understand the guy because, again, I've been in his position, but at this point I just want to get home and forget about the whole mess. But I have to make sure he gets home safe, so we stop in front of his house, and as he is about to leave he turns around and says, "Please take good care of her, she is happier with you." He gets off the car and walks off into the night. A month goes by, and I see both the girl and her best friend walking down the street holding hands as a couple. This a throwback, but it's a goodie. This was just when I started college, and I still lived at home with my mom at that time because I was saving for an apartment. My friend Jordan, who is half black and half Caucasian, looks a lot like his dad, who is African. While on the other hand, his little brother Tyler looks much more like his mother, who is Scandinavian, but with a very, very slight complexion. We call it the secret melanin. I wanted to date this Chinese girl that lived in our area named Lucy. Lucy was sweet and quite a chill individual, and I had a small crush on her around that time. So I thought, why not take a swing? I like you, you like me. So maybe we can work something out. If not, then fuck it. I took a chance, and we can still act like normal friends afterwards. I'm gonna move out soon anyways, so why not take a chance? When I asked Lucy out on a date, she declined, which I kinda expected, but stinged a little bit. So I thought to myself, that was that, and we can move on. But for some weird reason, Lucy had to give an explanation to the decline. She stated that she liked me, but that she couldn't date me. I asked what exactly was wrong with dating me, unless of course it's something I can change very quick. She told me that it was due to the fact that I was black. Now I was sincerely confused about this, because Lucy really under no circumstances seemed racist to me. So I asked her why she couldn't date black guys. She told me her parents would not approve of it. So I told her it's fine, and she doesn't have to feel bad. I gave it a shot, and I tried, but I can't change people's emotions. Or family for that matter. We agreed to just let it slide. So when I came home, I called up my best friend and told him about it. He found it a bit sad, since we got along quite well, but that's life. 3 months later, I'm chilling with my friend Jordan at his house, trying to figure out what gave his Xbox a red ring, when his little brother Tyler walks in and breaks it to me without any hesitation. Lucy wants to date me, small city I guess, while looking gleefully. I look at him and basically tell him congrats and that I'm happy for him, and promise to not make anything awkward between them or us. He replies with, "Oh, I declined." I was gasping at this moment. I asked him why. I thought he would be a bit more excited about it. He explained to me that once she asked him if he liked her too, he replied by grabbing his phone and showing him a picture of a cookout with me, Jordan, him, and Tyler's parents. He pointed at his dad and basically asked her, "Is this going to be an issue?" Because that's my dad. Lucy was dumbstruck. She couldn't comprehend for a second. Genetics, I know, right? And basically explained to Tyler that her parents might have a hard time accepting it, but that she would do her best to keep her parents happy and date Tyler at the same time. Tyler, being the smart kid that he is, could smell a red flag from a mile away, so he replied with, "Sorry, this is not going to work out well if we date." She was sad, but they both agreed that it would be too much bullshit. Now you might think to yourself, what a nice little petty revenge, but isn't it a little bit sad for Lucy? Well, guess who got so sick of her parents that she moved out and finally came out of the closet, which her parents really didn't appreciate. Seems like ending most of your sentence regarding your love life with "and my parents" is not a good indication for a healthy relationship, and can sometimes give people the feeling that they are dating an extension of her parents and not an own individual person. Lucy took a healthy distance from her mom and dad and eventually ended with a nice girlfriend. So in the end, the real revenge was to the parents for trying to helicopter their daughter's love life to a weird extent. Thank you for reading. Story 3. Met this girl online. We agreed to meet at a bar near my house. Being nervous, I get there about a half hour early. I go inside and sit at a table near the door and order a Coke. The waitress asks for my ID and then walks away. Soon after, a girl walks up and sits down at my table and asks me if I recognize her. I didn't at first, but then I realize it's this girl Amy who I used to be friends with in high school, but haven't seen in 13 years. We sit there and talk for a few minutes and we catch up. She's engaged and works at this bar, blah blah blah. She says, "Hey, do you remember my friend Nikki?" Nikki is a girl I had a quite large crush on when we used to hang out back in HS. I said yes, and she tells me Nikki is sitting across the room, and she'll tell her I'm here. So Amy walks away and Nikki walks over and sits down. She's even cuter than I remember, and it don't take long for those crush feelings to come back. I learned that she has a 4-year-old daughter, and she's single. She also likes a lot of the same music I do. We seem to really hit it off, but I'm constantly looking for this girl I'm supposed to meet. Nikki sits and talks to me for about 45 minutes. This girl I'm supposed to be meeting is late, and I'm beginning to feel like she stood me up, but I'm kinda glad because I really don't want to stop talking to Nikki. Finally, this girl and a group of about 4 guys walk in. The girl I'm supposed to meet was in a band and she was coming after practice. She said the band might all show up to the bar for drinks. The girl eyeballs me and they grab a table. I sit and talk to Nikki some more, but I feel like I should be going over to the other table, but I also feel like she's almost an hour late. Fuck her. The whole time I'm nervous and not really acting like myself. I'm completely smitten with Nikki and worried about this other girl too. The girl wasn't attractive in the slightest and very much not the type of girl I go for. This girl is really trashy. I'm in an odd predicament and my nerves are causing me to say stupid stuff to Nikki like, I'm just meeting this girl as a friend. I'm not interested in her. After about 15 minutes, I tell Nikki that I should at least go say hi and introduce myself. She tells me good luck, nice seeing you again, etc., and goes back to her original table. I walk over awkwardly to this table full of guys and this one girl and have to get her attention. When she finally looks over, I say hi, I'm CamFDM781, how are you? She says fine and looks a little confused, so I ask, aren't you underscore? And she says no, sorry. I'm pretty much thinking, FFFFFU to myself. I walk back over to Nikki's table, she's getting ready to leave, and try awkwardly to explain what just happened. She kinda laughs it off, and she's on her way out the door. She's very nice and says her goodbyes to Amy and I. We had added each other as friends on Facebook while we were talking at my table before. I messaged her and apologized for not being myself and the situation mistake, and that we should maybe hang out sometime. I didn't hear back from her for 2 weeks or so. She never mentioned hanging out, and she said she was glad we caught up. She said I was just how she remembered me from HS. I was a completely different person in HS, and like to think I've changed since then. That was basically it. I've commented on some of her posts on FB, and she never acknowledges I said anything. As far as the girl I was supposed to meet, she said that she told me she would call me if we were going to meet. She never told me that. I told her she blew it, and I've never talked to her since. Another story to share. So I decided to be open-minded and try online dating once. Bad idea. Never do it. I show up at TGI Fridays where we're meeting. I stand out front, and he's like 10 minutes late. And I'm progressively becoming antsy, because there's a creepy figure sitting in a car with their headlights on just like chilling in the parking lot, and I mostly just want to get away from that car as soon as possible. Then, to my chagrin, the creepy figure gets out of the car after having sat there for like 20 minutes, and it's my date. My only thought, oh fuck. He walks up frantically, and is shaking from nerves, and just says, let's go inside. Hesitantly. I walk inside after him. We sit down, he's guitaring like a frickin' maniac, talking at 1,000 miles per hour, and refusing to make eye contact with me. He only talks to the space next to the side of my head. Trying to make the best of this horrifically uncomfortable situation, I try to find some common ground. I bring up Lady Gaga. We're 2 gay men. Lady Gaga is like the gate 8 safe card. But this, however, turns out to be the worst decision of my life. He gets incredibly excited and begins to tell me at twice the talking speed about how he follows her around the country, and not just at her concerts, to like press releases, interviews, her trailer on music video shoots. This homo is a class A creepy mother f***ing stalker. After 20 minutes of him describing stalking behaviors that can't be anything short of illegal, our food and his beer comes. Halfway through his beer he decides to tell me that he really shouldn't be drinking because he's an alcoholic, and last year, he had to file bankruptcy because he spent all of his money on alcohol. Needless to say, I excused myself from the table, found the waiter, gave him a $20 bill to cover my food, and get the F out. Story 6. Buddy of mine wanted to get in the game, but is super cheap, so he was using plenty of fish, mistake 1. Connects with a chick who seemed down to clown, so he, mistake 2, invited her to his house. She immediately is upset that he doesn't have Tito's vodka, and that's the only thing she drinks. So she insists they go to the liquor store and get some. Now my buddy is 50-50 that he's going to get robbed, but the other 50% is a good chance of getting laid. So he compromises by telling her to drive and leaves his wallet behind. They get into her car, and there's no seat in the passenger side. She says she has a huge dog, so she took the seat out and just sit in the back. And they head off to the liquor store. During the drive, he comes to the understanding that this woman is drunk. He's still holding out for the sex possibility, though they get to the liquor store, and it's too late, closed. The chick says, I know a store they're open late, but the liquor stores are all state stores, they all have the same hours. She insists she knows a place, and he's captive in the back seat. She gets on the interstate, and a while goes by in silence, and he eventually asked, where are we going? And she screams in terror. She'd forgotten he was in the back seat. She tells him they're going to the liquor store in a city 30 minutes away. Now he's almost given up on the failing hope of getting some strange, and just wants to live. Asks if they can just go home, and she screams again. Forgot he was in the car again. So he tried to keep a full conversation going to keep her awake and aware of him, and they eventually get to the destination magic open liquor store. It was closed. She insists it's open and goes to the door and starts pounding on it. Now comes the peanut gallery. Some Mexican guys are sitting in a truck drinking beers and yell at her, that's closed. You want a beer? And she starts yelling racial slurs at them, and not even the right ones for Mexicans. Now 3 Mexicans and a drunk/high/bipolar chick are trading profanities. And my buddy finally reached sex chance equals 0% point and just walked away. Turned around the corner and sat down at a bus stop and called me. It's like 1 a.m. on a work night, and I see the call and like, this can't be good. So I drive to get him. He tells me this whole long story that I honestly can't remember half of. It was much worse. Then we drank at his place until dawn and called in sick to work. On top of this story here is another. Not a date, but rather a girl I was hooking up with at a party, and it's kinda long, but I just think the whole thing was so weird it's worth sharing. We were in her kitchen and we begin to make out, and suddenly she starts talking about how her best friend is totally in love with her, but she keeps kissing me while saying so. Then she elaborates by saying, yeah, my best friend is outside in the party, and I'm like, whoa. Well, should we stop? She goes, no, and I'm kinda uncomfortable anyways because I've been the best friend and I kinda wanna stop. She goes, no, it's totally fine, and then keeps going on about it. Lick really going into detail, and tells me the whole story about how she liked him, but then she didn't, and I'm like, okay. And before I can decide what to do, the best friend walks into the kitchen. He goes, I'm sorry, and then walks out. Normal, uncomfortable situation, right? Well, this happens at least 3 times. Like, he keeps walking in and going, sorry, dude is clearly drunk at this point. So the 3rd time I'm like, nah, dude, you guys clearly need to talk. I'll just be outside, you figure out stuff. And the girl holds my hand and makes me stay, but then starts talking to him and like, she wants me to be a 3rd neutral party or something. She begins to tell him that she didn't like when he did so, and she asks me, what do you think, while holding my arm tightly and not letting me go. I said fuck it and just end up playing along and actively listening to them and trying to help them. I'm a teacher, so I guess I'm good at that. Long story short, I managed to get out of that situation eventually. We go outside, and a few hours later people start leaving, so I go back to her apartment to grab my stuff. Of course, she comes back with me, and now we're all alone in the apartment. We go back to the kitchen and things start getting hot again, when suddenly we hear a knock on the door. And guess whose voice we hear outside? Yeah, of course, her best friend. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's it, bye. And as I'm about to leave, she stomps her feet on top of the couch, putting her leg between me and the door, and asks me, so what are we? And I'm like, nothing. We just kissed, and listen, I'm sorry, I just went through a breakup, so I'm not really looking for anything more than that right now. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. And that was true, but also I didn't want to get into that whole mess at all. She goes, but can we still mess around some more? And before I can say anything, the best friend knocks again. So we open the door and he is there, and then he says sorry again, and I say, chill, I'm leaving anyways. And before I can go down the stairs, the girl calls me up and goes, my friend is too drunk. Can you make sure he gets home safe? And since I can't for the life of me say no to that, I end up in a cab with him 5 minutes later. During the trip, he starts telling me how much he loves her, but that she hurt him, and so on and so on. And I can totally understand the guy because, again, I've been in his position, but at this point I just want to get home and forget about the whole mess. But I have to make sure he gets home safe, so we stop in front of his house, and as he is about to leave, he turns around and says, please take good care of her, she is happier with you. He gets off the car and walks off into the night. A month goes by, and I see both the girl and her best friend walking down the street holding hands as a couple.